She was strangled to the point that her neck was broken by her teacher, who then left her for dead in the woods. He was recently released from prison, and the video of them finding her is absolutely horrifying. This is the disturbing case of Ashley Reeves. On April 27th, 2006, 17-year-old Ashley Reeves told her parents that she was going to a job interview. So she took her boyfriend's car and then left her Belleville, Illinois home. But in all reality, Ashley was actually going to meet up with 26-year-old Samson Shelton, who at the time was a driver's ed teacher, but he had previously been a teacher at her middle school. Unbeknownst to everyone, the two had been having an intimate relationship together. At least that's what Samson says. What he was actually doing was grooming and abusing her since she was a minor. So when a few hours passed and Ashley never came home, her parents immediately reported her missing to the police. They then found the car Ashley was driving abandoned on the side of the road, and in it were the clothes that she was supposed to be wearing to the job interview. At this point, everyone knew that Ashley was in danger, so her mom started combing through her phone records to see who she'd been talking to in the days leading up to her disappearance. One number stood out, and it belonged to Samson. So when her mom called him, Samson said that he had no idea where Ashley was and hung up on her. At this point in time, he was line dancing at a country bar. Friends of Ashley's came forward and told police that she'd been seeing an older man and had planned to meet him the night she disappeared. This was enough evidence to bring Samson in for questioning, which is exactly what the police did. It would take 12 hours of interrogating for him to begin confessing, but at first he admitted that he was with her the day she went missing. But he said that they had had an argument while he was driving, and he kicked her out of the car, leaving her behind. He said he didn't do a single thing to hurt her. A few more hours would go by before he confessed to everything. He admitted to having an intimate relationship with Ashley, but said that she was persistent and that she was the one who pursued him for a long time. He then admitted to having an argument the day she went missing while they were driving. He said he tried to end things with her and she got mad, so he put her in a chokehold, which ended up breaking her neck. Samson said that her whole body went limp, and in a panic, he dumped her body in a wooded area in Citizens Park. He said that he wanted to make it look like she had been strangled in the woods. So to emphasize this, he put his belt around her neck and strangled her repeatedly. At one point, he was pulling the belt so tight around her neck that it actually broke. Thinking she was dead, he left her in the woods and then went line dancing at the country bar. This is when he spoke to Ashley's mom on the phone. She was looking for her daughter and he had just gotten done brutally strangling her. Yet he decided to go line dancing, not having a single care in the world. So Samson told police where Ashley's body was, and when they went looking for her, they fully expected her to be dead. After 40 minutes in the pouring rain and complete darkness, police stumbled across Ashley's body, but somehow she was still alive, even after having her neck broken and being strangled repeatedly. On top of that, she was left alone in the woods with her injuries for 30 hours, but she was alive. Authorities didn't think she was going to survive because she suffered severe brain trauma from the attack, but she did. She spent the next year relearning how to swallow, walk, and talk, and although she doesn't remember much from that day, she is alive. Samson was then arrested, where he pleaded guilty to attempted murder. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison, but he was released a couple of months ago after having only served 17. He was given the earliest possible release allowed by the law, which is just crazy to me. He is clearly a danger to society. He will spend the next 3 years on parole and is banned from having any contact with Ashley. I feel like this isn't justice, and I can't even imagine how Ashley feels knowing that he is a free man. He hasn't shown any remorse, and even during the interrogation, he only cared about himself. He literally asked the detective if he would have a private toilet in prison because he can't pee in front of anyone else. Meanwhile, Ashley was laying there, slowly dying. What he did was deranged, and everyone in Illinois should know his face and be careful around him.
Saying no apparently doesn't work anymore because this girl was unalived in the middle of class for rejecting him. Camila Zanga, only 24, was studying hours away from home trying to build a better life for her 5-year-old son. And while she studied, she had the unfortunate pleasure of meeting Edwin. A walking red flag in human form, obsessive, aggressive, fully unhinged, and everyone knew it. Camila tried to ignore him and focus on her future, but this man made it his full-time job to make her life miserable. It got so bad that she actually thought about dropping out, but she stayed for her son. And it breaks my heart to say, but that decision is what will lead her son to grow up without a mother. Edwin was a violent man. One time a teacher told him to take off his earphones during class and he punched the teacher in the face. How was he allowed to walk on school grounds after that? I don't know. And then came October 15th, 2024. Class is just starting and out of nowhere, Edwin stands up and attacks Camila. He starts her over and over again, all over her body repeatedly. And what makes this even worse is that the entire class was right there. Some kids ran away because imagine witnessing that, and then others try to find whatever just to throw at him, and the rest were just standing there recording him. Like, the whole time this man is telling her how much he loves her while actively taking her life. If only someone was brave enough to physically hold him back, because once he stopped, and God knows why, Camila was rushed to the hospital and unfortunately did not survive. When they asked Edwin why he did this, he had the nerve to say, because she ruined my life and I wanted revenge. Revenge for not wanting to date him, for focusing on her goals rather than on some boy. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison. 30 years for taking a mother from her child. For doing all of this in front of a class full of witnesses. And one day when her son is grown, he might just see that man walking free again. We have to stop pretending that no is enough to keep us safe and actually start protecting ourselves. Like, grab some pepper spray or something, I don't know. Thank you for still being here with me, and we have to continue saying her name so that man does not see the light of day ever again. Please. I really hope to see you in my next video, and as always, group hug.
How would you react to finding photos of your father in lingerie? In 2012, 13-year-old Dylan Redwine was very reluctant to see his father Mark over the Thanksgiving break. But unfortunately, Dylan had no choice but to go because the court had mandated this visit and his mom could get into legal trouble if she didn't comply. Dylan took a flight to Durango, Colorado, and once his father picked him up from the airport, they had very minimal communication, and then they went to a nearby Walmart. Dylan really didn't want to spend the night at his father's house, so he asked if he could spend the night at his friend's house, but his father said no, so they just went back to his home. Dylan texted his friend that night that he was going to stop by at his house in the morning at 6:30 a.m., but once that time came around, he never showed up, and around 6:46 a.m. is when his friend started to get worried. Mark stated that he left the morning of November 19th to run some errands, and once he got back home, Dylan was gone. However, Dylan's mother Elaine did not believe this story, and immediately she knew that Mark had something to do with this. Dylan's brother Corey stated that the two had tension because Dylan had confronted their father about some disturbing images that he had found. These photos that were discovered by Dylan showed Mark in women's lingerie eating poop from a diaper. The relationship between the boys and their father had become very tense, especially after the divorce, the custody battle for Dylan, and especially after finding those disturbing photos. It is believed that Mark took the life of Dylan in his living room, decapitated him, and threw him in the wilderness for animals to eat him. There was a search warrant for Mark's home, and that is when they discovered Dylan's blood in the living room. Also, a cadaver dog reacted to the scent of a corpse in the bed of Mark's truck. In June of 2013, roughly 8 miles away, they had found some of Dylan's remains, and it was revealed that he succumbed to stab wounds. Mark was convicted of second-degree murder and was sentenced to 48 years in prison.
Is there a serial killer only targeting cats loose on the streets of London? If I was a cat owner right now, I would be keeping my pet indoors at all times. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the Croydon Cat Killer. Just last month, in August 2025, a man named Peter, living in Croydon, peered out of his window and noticed his beloved cat Tux lay at the bottom of the drive. Immediately, as soon as Peter seen Tux, he knew that something wasn't right and raced out to him. Peter scooped Tux up into his arms, and that is when he noticed it, a slicing wound going all the way down Tux's midsection. He had been deeply cut from his chest right down to his tail, which had been ripped off. Whoever had done this had brutally murdered Tux and then left him on Peter's drive for Peter to discover him. Tux is believed to be the most recent victim of the Croydon Cat Killer, who has been actively targeting, murdering and mutilating cats since 2014 to 2015. This killer mainly targets cats in the Croydon area, however he apparently has victims stretching all the way up to Manchester. Since the start of his reign of terror, it's believed that this killer is responsible for the murders of over 400 cats. Often he would murder them, decapitate them, removing their tails, dismembering them, forcing things down their throat, and in some instances even completely chopping them in half. The killer horrifically murders the animals and then leaves the pet for the owners to discover them. One woman reported that she had went out to her garden one day and found the body of her cat without its head. It had been decapitated, and then the decapitated head turned up on her garden furniture days later. In 2015, an investigation was opened into the Croydon Cat Killer. However, the Metropolitan Police doesn't think that he is a person, and the case was closed. They state that these killings came from feral foxes or fatal hit and runs. Some CCTV that they were able to recover from the surrounding areas where the killings had been happening did show images of foxes walking about with cat remains. But many, if not most people, don't believe that for a second. How could a fox inflict those injuries and leave the bodies for the owners to find, sometimes even days later? Comment down below and let me know what you think.
I don't think I will ever recover after learning about what happened to Annalise Michel and listening to the audio tapes of her exorcism. On July 1st, 1976, 23-year-old Annalise Michel would die after undergoing 67 exorcisms over the span of 10 months for demonic possession. What she experienced leading up to her death is horrifying. So Annalise lived in West Germany with her 3 sisters and parents, and they grew up very religious as Roman Catholics, and they went to Mass twice a week. When she was 16 years old, she suddenly blacked out at school and walked around in a trance-like state. Her parents didn't quite understand why, but a year later she blacked out once again. She was in bed this time and woke up in another trance-like state, having wet the bed. Her parents then took her to the doctor, where she was diagnosed with psychosis caused by temporal lobe epilepsy. She was then put on a string of medication to try and treat both, but nothing worked, and she was eventually also diagnosed with depression. By 20 years old, Annalise's mental condition got even worse, and it was at this point that she refused to be around anyone or anything religious. In 1970, she had a devastating third seizure, and after this, she started seeing the devil everywhere she went, and she would hear voices telling her that she was damned and that she was going to rot in hell. After 5 years of no improvement on medication, Annalise and her parents began to think that she was possessed by a demon. So they appealed to the Catholic Church for an exorcism, but initially they were rejected. They lost all hope in traditional doctors and medication, and eventually they stopped going to the doctor altogether. But in that time frame, Annalise's behavior grew more and more terrifying. She became incredibly aggressive and would hurt herself. She drank her own urine and would eat insects and crawl under tables. It got so bad that she even barked like a dog for 2 days, would compulsively do up to 400 squats a day, and even bit the head off of a dead bird. She would then resort to growling and was then taken to a commune. During her time there, she couldn't even be in the same room as a crucifix, and she would refuse to drink holy water. When she would walk up to the shrine, she physically couldn't enter because she said that the soil burned like fire and she couldn't take it any longer. Annalise said that when she looked around at the others praying, it looked like they were gnashing their teeth at her. It was there that she was determined to be suffering from demonic possession. In 1975, the family finally got approval from a local bishop to begin performing exorcisms, but this was ordered to be in total secrecy. The exorcisms would be performed by 2 priests and started in late September of 1975. Over the next 10 months, Annalise would be subjected to 1 or 2 exorcisms a week, and those would last up to 4 hours long. In total, she underwent 67 exorcisms, and the audio tapes from them are terrifying.
Nein, ich sag's nicht. Aber das Ding, das gäbe Sachen, die Drecksau, das haben die hineingepflanzt.
Die heilige Kommunion.
Ja, ja!
Sohn des Heiligen Geistes. Amen.
During these exorcisms, Annalise said that she was possessed by these 6 demons, and one thing that she said will forever haunt me. She said, quote, "People are as stupid as pigs. They think it's all over after death. It goes on," end quote. These exorcisms were so violent that she broke both of her knees and had ripped the tendons from continually kneeling in prayer. She also began refusing to eat food. On July 1st, 1976, 10 months after the first exorcism, Annalise died. Her official cause of death was from malnutrition and dehydration. She was in a state of near starvation for nearly a year, and she weighed only 66 pounds. Because of the state she was in, Annalise's parents and the 2 priests performing the exorcisms were arrested, and their case went to trial. At the trial, doctors argued that Annalise wasn't ever possessed, and that the manifestations of demonic possession were a psychological effect of her strict religious upbringing and her epilepsy. The defense argued that nothing they did was illegal, and in court they played the audio tapes from the exorcisms to prove that she was indeed possessed. They also said that Annalise was finally freed of demonic possession right before she died. It was proven that her death could have been prevented, and all parties were found guilty of negligent homicide. The priests were sentenced to 6 months in jail, but that was later reduced to 3 years probation and having to pay a fine. Although her parents were found guilty, under German law, they weren't charged because they'd already suffered enough. Several years after the exorcism of Anneliese Michel, the Catholic Church took back the claim that she was ever possessed. I first learned about this case after watching this movie, which is loosely based on Anneliese, and the movie still, to this day, scares me so bad. This is actually the only topic that I am genuinely scared to talk about. Like, it is such bad energy.
On American Idol, he was gushing about how much he loved his wife. Now he's charged with killing her and staging the crime scene. It was the early hours of the 16th of February when police in Tip County, Ohio, got a frantic phone call. Panting, this guy tells them on the phone that somebody's broke into their house and killed his wife. Obviously, emergency services raced to the scene and tragically found Ashley Flynn's lifeless body in the bedroom. Now, she was only 37 years old. She was an amazing woman. She was an incredible teacher and incredible mum. She had 2 little girls and even made time to volunteer for her local community. Why the hell would somebody want her dead? Caleb Flynn, her husband, was actually a contestant on American Idol way back, like years and years ago, and had gushed on the show about how much he loved her, how pretty she was. She looked like Carrie Underwood. From the outside looking in, it seemed like he adored her. But police felt something was very odd right from the get-go. Firstly, why was one person in the home killed and not the others? Surely if you were going to break into a home and kill somebody, you'd kill everybody so that there were no living witnesses. And at first they were saying maybe this is a burglary gone wrong, but if you've listened to my podcast and you've heard the episode about Janet Abaroa, you will know just how unlikely it is that a home invasion / burglary would end in a homicide. It just very, very rarely happens. If someone wants to break in and steal stuff, they're going to break in and steal stuff. And secondly, Caleb was very quick on the phone to kind of set the narrative. It was kind of like he was trying to lay out his storyline from the get-go, in my opinion. He even on the call mentioned that somebody had broken in before mentioning his wife was murdered. Surely you'd lead with the murder. You'd immediately want to tell people that somebody there is killed, somebody incredibly dangerous is on the run. There were also, interestingly, no signs of forced entry to the home, and Caleb had access to a G, and they found her cause of death was a G-shot wound. Caleb was arrested for the murder and is so far pleading not guilty.
She promised her mom she would never sneak out again, but the very next day she went missing, and I think we know who did it. Her name is Kayla Berg, and what happened to her still haunts everyone who hears it. That night, Kayla told her mom that she was staying at her friend Natasha's house, but that wasn't the plan, not even close. They wanted to go to a party, one with older boys, drinks, and everything that their parents would have said no to. So they pulled the oldest trick out of the book. Kayla told her mom she was staying at Natasha told her mom she was staying at Kayla's, and it worked. The girls made it to the party, but what makes this worse is Kayla didn't have a phone, so when she didn't make it home that night, nobody could reach her. It's now the next morning, and Kayla's mom, Hope, is calling everyone. She calls Natasha's mom, and that's when it both hits them. They've been lied to, and both their daughters are missing. Hope files a missing persons report immediately, but later that same day, Kayla walks straight through the front door saying that she lost track of time. I mean, her mom is obviously furious, but she's a mother first, so all she can do is be thankful that her daughter is alive and safe. So she made Kayla promise to never sneak out again, but the next day she disappears, except this time nobody would ever see Kayla alive again. That day she went to go visit her father, James. Quick backstory, her parents are separated and her father is battling cancer. It was a lot for her to handle, so she made sure to check in with him from time to time. At around 8:30 p.m. a man named Kevin, who's 24 by the way, picks her up. She kisses her dad goodbye and gets into his car. Now Kevin isn't just some stranger. I mean, he is 24 years old hanging with a 15-year-old, but he's basically part of the family. At 9:30 p.m. Kayla stops by McDonald's to visit her friend Beth, who's working night shift. Beth remembers it like it was yesterday. She says that Kayla pulled up in Kevin's Jeep, but only Kayla came inside. She told Beth that she was planning to hang out with Kevin and that she would call her after shift, but that call never came, and that was the last time anyone ever saw Kayla alive again. The next morning, Kayla's dad realizes that she's never come home yet, and at first he's just thinking, oh, she's pulling that same stunt from the night before, but then hours go by and that's when panic starts settling in. He calls Kevin, and his answer only made things worse. He says he dropped Kayla off but doesn't remember where, he doesn't know the address, and he doesn't know the friend's name. Tell me that doesn't sound suspicious. Later that day, James calls Hope, but she doesn't answer, so he leaves a message, and the next day, Hope hears that message, but this time her gut was screaming that something was seriously wrong. She starts her own research, asking anyone and everyone who might know who this mysterious friend was. She calls Kevin, but he doesn't answer, and then hours later, he sends a text message. Yes, a text message. Not a phone call, a text. He says his phone was dead and sticks to the same story that he told Kayla's dad. That he dropped her off at a house that was dark, no lights on, and doesn't know the address. Days pass and Kayla still isn't home, so her mom has no choice once again to report her missing. At first, police listed her as an endangered runaway, but as more time passes, things just stop making sense. Kevin's story kept changing. At first, he's like, I don't remember where she went, I don't remember. But then afterwards, he was like, wait, actually, I dropped her off at her ex-boyfriend Miguel's house. Except Miguel didn't live there, and Kayla knew that. The house was abandoned. They weren't even dating anymore, so why would she ask to be dropped off there? Police checked Kevin's location, and guess what? It was either dead, turned off, or not working the entire time he was with Kayla. So there's literally zero proof that he took her to that house. How convenient for him. Police search his house, his car, his phone records. They find things, but nothing that leads to Kayla. Kevin tells police he went straight home that night. His mom backs up his alibi, obviously, but beyond that, there's nothing to actually support it. And when police start pressing him harder, he lawyers up. They tried hitting him with minor charges like reckless driving and endangering a minor, hoping that he would crack under the pressure, but Kevin pled not guilty and those charges were dismissed. Police knew he was hiding something, but they couldn't prove it, so they shifted their focus to Miguel, and he didn't help either. They say he never reached out to the family, he never helped search for her, and Kayla's mom said that she found that very odd of him. Unfortunately, the case went cold for years until 2016. This really creepy video titled Hi Walter started going viral. A man in the video starts talking about meeting a girl at the mall, and in the background there's a girl tied up in the room behind him. The internet exploded saying that she looked just like Kayla, and it was so convincing that even the FBI started investigating it. But the video turned out to be fake. The girl was an actor, and that false hope nearly broke Kayla's family all over again. But they did say if there was one good thing that came out of that, it was the fact that more people learned Kayla's name. To this day, Kayla is still missing and we don't know what happened. But if you ask her family, they'll tell you exactly who they think knows the truth, and his name is Kevin. But what do you guys think happened? Is Kevin actually hiding something, or is he an innocent man that just so happened to see her last?
Guys, the most deranged human being. The crime scene, which was the house that he lived in, has been described as one of the most disturbing crime scenes in American history. When one of the officers walked in and saw what he saw, he immediately ran out of the house to throw up. I almost threw up researching this case. Edward Theodore Gein, he was born in La Crosse, Wisconsin. He was the baby of the family. He had an older brother, and the family of four was unstable, to say the least. George, the father, had his own set of issues that he would take out on his family, and the mother, Augusta, was a very particular kind of person. She was the one who pretty much ran their entire household. Very strict, very religious, and very passionate in her belief that all women were immoral and instruments of the devil. Okay, yeah, she was a very angry woman. Like, anger would just pour out of her pores. She had so much in her. The two of them also just flat out hated each other, but because of Augusta's religious beliefs, they refused to get a divorce. In 1915, the family moved to a very isolated farm in Plainfield, Wisconsin, and that house, like the other, was ran by Augusta like a very tight ship. And this belief she had of hating women but also despising men was one that she installed in both Ed and his brother. I'm not sure how it affected Ed's brother, but for Ed, his brain was literally wired and taught to basically hate / be scared of anyone around him, in turn leaving him to feel very isolated, which then led him to idolizing and worshiping his mother. He was obsessed with his mother, but in the way that we often see in these cases, where it's like an obsession but also mixed with resentment for never being shown love. And this is really important. When Ed was little, he never ever left the farm. He only ever left his house to go to school, and he was a really shy kid who was described to have really strange mannerisms. For example, sometimes he would be sitting in the back of the classroom just staring at his classmates very quietly, and then he would burst out with this loud evil laughter. Is that not the creepiest thing you've ever heard? In 1940, after 3 years of being severely ill when Ed was 34 years old, his father passed away, and him being gone meant that Ed and his brother began working odd jobs here and there to make money to support the family. But it was in one of those odd jobs that the brother met a single mother and they started dating. And Ed, like I said, was obsessed with his mother, so much so that the only woman he ever gave any attention to was his mom. He never talked to any other girls, he never dated anyone. And when his brother Henry did what Ed would never dare to do, get into a relationship, Ed began to resent him as well. And then one day in 1944, when the brothers were out together working on the farm, there was a fire started that led to Henry's death. His death was ruled as an accident. However, the circumstances surrounding his death suggest to a lot of people that it wasn't an accident at all. Ed was the one who went to go get help from authorities, and he was claiming that he didn't know where his brother was, didn't know what happened, but when authorities got there, he led them directly to the deceased body of his brother. The following year, Augusta, his mother, passes away, and this leads Ed into a deranged state of mind. He was not doing well. Psychologists believe that it was at this point of his life that Ed entered some kind of psychosis. Someone who later studied his behavior has said, quote, Ed lost his only friend and one true love, and he was absolutely alone in the world, end quote. After her passing, he left his mother's room completely untouched, almost as if she was coming back to it, and he would tape off and board up areas and different rooms around the house that his mother used to be in to preserve them, almost to keep as this like kind of weird memorial for her. And the rooms in the house that he did live in were filthy. Just a complete disaster, absolutely disgusting. At this point of his life, now all alone with no one to talk to, Ed began to grow interest in very specific odd things, such as graveyards, specifically robbing graveyards, anatomy and body parts, and he also loved to read gruesome details about gruesome crimes. That's what he liked to spend his time looking into and reading about when he was home. But if he wasn't home, he was working, and working doing what, you may ask? Babysitting. Yes, babysitting. I'm unsure how anyone ever trusted Ed Gein to look after their children, but some did. Throughout the next few years, slowly but surely, people from the area began to mysteriously disappear. In May of 1947, a couple of years after Ed's mom passed away, an 8-year-old little girl named Georgia disappeared. She was dropped off right by her house, but she never made it home. Neighbors reported seeing her at the mailbox, stopping by to check her mail, but then she was gone. Neighbors also reported seeing a black Ford driving around the area that afternoon. Ed Gein drove a black Ford. In 1952, 42-year-old Victor Travis and Ray Bergs disappeared after leaving a restaurant in Ray's car. Earlier that day, the two were said to have been hunting on a property that was right next to Ed's property. The two men, along with Ray's car, were never located. In 1953, 14-year-old Evelyn Grace Hartley disappeared while she was babysitting. One second she was there, the next she was gone, and authorities would never be able to find her or any trace of her. 54-year-old Mary Hogan was a woman who worked at a tavern that Ed frequently visited. The reason why he liked to visit that particular tavern was to sit there and stare at Mary, because Mary reminded him of his mom. They looked similar, they had similar mannerisms, and Ed just loved to go sit there and watch her until December of 1954, when Mary mysteriously disappeared. And now we get to November of 1957, 3 years after Mary's disappearance. Every year there was a deer hunting event that took place in the area. The event itself lasted days, it was a whole thing, but throughout it, people were popping in and out of town, stopping by different shops, attracting traffic to the area. Well, on November 16th, some of the men participating in the event wanted to stop by a hardware store, so they headed over, but it was closed, which was weird because that store was never closed. The owner, 58-year-old Bernice Warden, was always there, and her son Frank, who just happened to be a deputy sheriff, knew for a fact that she had opened up the store that day. So when he was made aware that she wasn't there and that the door was locked, he immediately headed over. He knew something was wrong, and as soon as he got there, he opened the door, he entered the shop, his stomach sank. The shop itself was a disaster. Red liquid stained the floors, and as soon as he saw this, he immediately called the police. And when thinking about what could have happened to his mother, one name came to mind: Ed Gein. The day prior, Ed Gein had been inside of that hardware store inquiring about antifreeze. While Frank was there waiting for authorities to arrive, he took a look at the register and noticed that the last receipt, the last sale before his mom disappeared, was for a gallon of antifreeze. It had to be Ed. He knew it in his gut, and he immediately told authorities about his suspicion. Police officers were dispatched to Ed's house. He wasn't there, so a group of them stayed inside the house to search it, while a different group went to go search for Ed. And inside of that house, what they found, I don't even know a word to properly describe it, but massive warning, massive warning. What you are about to hear is truly despicable and incredibly graphic. When officers entered the house, it was dark, but they continued walking through until one of the officers felt something brush up against his shoulder. What he felt was the body of the hardware shop owner, 58-year-old Bernice Warden, hanging from the ceiling, upside down by her ankles, missing her head and her insides. Her heart was found inside of a plastic bag on the floor, and her head was found in a separate bag that let out steam when it was first opened. Inside of a different plastic bag, there was a face found, not a head, just a face with hair still attached to it. That face was recognized to be 54-year-old Mary Hogan, the woman who worked at the tavern that Ed frequently visited because she reminded him of his mom. There were also bowls made out of human skulls, organs inside of jars, a wastebasket made out of human skin, chairs upholstered with human skin, masks made from the skin of female faces that Ed would wear. Some had lipstick applied to them, a belt made out of human remains, a shoebox of preserved female body parts, another box with 4 noses, a lampshade made from a human face. The legs of his coffee table were made out of human shin bones, a tray of fingernails, a woman's suit made out of skin designed so that Ed could wear it to become his mother. He created this suit shortly after his mother passed away so that he could become his mother, to literally crawl inside of her skin. Leggings made from human skin, gloves made from human skin, a corset made from a female torso, skulls on his bedpost put up as decorations, and more female faces hung up on the wall as decor. Ed Gein was arrested and brought into the police station for questioning, and at first he was refusing to speak. That was until after he demanded a slice of apple pie with cheese on it, and then he was ready to talk. Ed Gein confessed to ending the lives of 58-year-old Bernice Warden and 54-year-old Mary Hogan. However, that was it. He only confessed to those 2. Officers are looking at him with disgust on their face, thinking, well, where did you get all of the other body parts? Which is when Ed explained that he had been sneaking into graveyards. He had done this at least 40 times, gone to the graveyards with intentions to dig up and steal bodies from their graves, bodies of women that looked like his mother, but out of the 40, he only actually went through with his plan 9 or 10 times. Authorities were able to confirm that this was true because Ed took them to the graveyard and pointed out the graves in which he dug up. But do you want to know something that makes me feel so uneasy? It makes sense, but it just doesn't sit right with me. Because those bodies were already deceased, he couldn't be charged with their deaths. And as far as the other disappearances we mentioned earlier, Ed Gein hasn't ever officially been tied to them, although it is highly likely that he was the person responsible. He was only charged with 1 count of murder for Bernice, and he pled not guilty by reason of insanity. He was seen by a psychiatrist who diagnosed him with schizophrenic personality with neurotic manifestations, therefore finding him clinically insane, meaning that he was found unfit to stand trial, and he was sent to the Central State Hospital for the criminally insane. He was there for 10 years, up until 1968, when doctors determined that he was, quote, mentally able to confer with counsel and participate in his defense, end quote. So his trial then began November 7th of 1968. It lasted 1 week. He was found guilty and was sent to spend the rest of his life in a mental hospital. Ed Gein passed away July 26th of 1984 when he was 77 years old. This is one of the ones where I'm like, yeah, he belongs nowhere else other than a mental hospital, because I've known about this case for a while, and honestly, I've put it off on purpose because I knew that it would make me want to crawl out of my skin, so uncomfortable. However, I saw that there's a new documentary, I think it's Netflix, coming out about him. And I was like, I have to chat with my people. I have to tell you guys who this guy is. Anyway, that's all I have for this video. Apologies if I did make you feel sick and the lighting is weird now. Like, what is this? So I'm glad that I'm done recording. But I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Also, new podcast episode dropping tonight. I love you guys so much. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
Imagine doing your weekly shop when a half-naked, screaming teenager runs into the supermarket. What happened next traumatized everyone. It was the 10th of November 1986 when a 17-year-old girl raced into a supermarket in Willagee near Perth, Australia. And just the look of absolute terror on her face and the shrill scream that came out of her mouth was enough to stop everyone in their tracks. She was Katie Moir, and what she had to say was traumatizing. Now, the police came and took the girl away away to find out what the hell was going on. She led them to a nearby home, 3 Morehouse Street. Inside, Kate had actually left little notes and personal items. She'd done this because she was convinced she was going to be murdered. She truly believed that she was going to die inside that house, and she was leaving clues for the police. Now, the owners of that home were married couple David and Catherine Burney, a lovely, pleasant couple from the area, or so people thought. David had actually been cruel and violent since day dot, since he was a child. He'd grown up in a very violent household, and honestly, that just kind of felt like the norm. So by the time he was 15, he'd committed his first known SA. This was of a landlady in a boarding house. He also apparently SA'd his own brother. Now, when he was young, he met this girl called Catherine, and they were absolutely inseparable at the time. They couldn't get enough of each other, and they ended up being literally partners in crime. They were breaking into people's houses, robbing people, but they ended up losing contact for a while after Catherine landed herself in prison at just 20. She then basically married this other guy called Donald and had loads of kids with him. I believe they had around 7 children. They were definitely busy. But David and Catherine ended up kind of falling back into each other's arms. They reunited in the 80s, and she just completely abandoned her massive family and just chucked Donald. And things were about to get very, very dark. Let me tell you, Donald had a lucky escape. They shared the most sick, deprived, dark fantasies you could imagine and decided to act on them. In early October 1986, they abducted a young student, Mary Nelson. Now, this poor girl was lured to their house under the pretense of like, we've heard that you need some new tires for your car. We've got some tires that you can have for very cheap. When she knocked on the door, David stood there with a knife. The couple overpowered her, chained her up, and repeatedly AR'd her. I don't know what you guys think, but personally, I actually think that this is worse than even just killing her there and then. They bundled her into their car, drove her, terrified, to Woodlands, SA'd her again, and then murdered her. But they weren't going to stop there. They had plans to do this again. 2 weeks later, they came across a 15-year-old girl hitchhiking. This was Susanna Candy. She was the most lovely, sweet girl that you could imagine, and she just needed a lift from Claremont. So she was relieved when she saw a friendly-looking couple pull alongside her. But after hopping into their car, she soon realized she'd made a fatal mistake. It was bound and gagged and driven to their home, terrified. And again, I don't know what you think, but this feels more cruel to me. They made her ring her own mum and be like, hey mum, I'm just staying at a friend's house, like, no need to worry about me. Basically to make sure that nobody was going to report her missing. Then she was put through hell. They kept her there for days and days, R-ing her, torturing her. It was a living nightmare until eventually she met the same fate as Mary and was buried next to her. But again, they weren't done. They were going to snatch another woman. This was Noeline Patterson, and they snatched her again from by the highway, and again she was forced to ring her family to prevent any kind of panic. Just think how horrific those families must have felt when they eventually discovered the truth. The whole conversation was a lie. But Noeline was actually very smart. She was like, oh, do you know what? I'm going to actually gain David's trust and try and build some kind of relationship with him so that hopefully he sets me free. And I've seen that work a lot. But this didn't exactly go the way that she'd planned, because by gaining David's trust and forming a relationship with him, she actually really pissed off Catherine. And in the end, the story ended the same way as the other victims did, being buried in the forest. It only took days for them to take another victim. This time it was Denise Brown. She was just, again, waiting for a lift by the side of the road when she was snatched. But this death was even more barbaric than the others. It felt like they were just trying to go further and further to satisfy their sick fantasies. Denise was assaulted repeatedly and then had her throat slit. But when they buried her, they realised that she was actually still alive. She was clawing at the dirt and gasping for air, desperately trying to cling on to life. So David grabbed an axe, and you can probably imagine how it ended. Infuriatingly, with all these girls vanishing, the police seemed to kind of be shrugging their shoulders. Kate would end up making a brave break for freedom one night after she got captured herself. And it all started with a knock at the door. So Kate had been captured by these monsters, chained up in the house repeatedly, just exactly the same as all of the other girls before her had. And she was quite clearly on borrowed time. I mean, this wasn't going to end well. And then there was a knock at the door. It was actually a substance dealer. Like, whoever thought that a substance dealer in this situation was actually going to kind of inadvertently save someone? Catherine heard the door, panicked, and shoved Kate into a room to prevent her from being seen, obviously. So Kate saw her opportunity and absolutely legged it out of the window. She was like, I don't have time to waste. I can see an opportunity when one presents itself. She ran screaming into the supermarket, and that's how this all came crashing down for this couple. Finally, their sick reign of terror was over and they admitted their crimes to the police. They actually showed them to the burial sites and they were very, very callous about it. Catherine even spat on one of the graves. They both actually got 4 life sentences, and when David was escorted past the crowds who were hurling abuse at him, rightly so, he turned and blew them a kiss. How gross. But he did actually end up unaliving himself in a cell in 2005.
It was a crime so gruesome and horrific that the town just canceled Halloween. A 17-year-old boy brutally kills both of his parents, and then his town believes that he did it because he was being possessed by a demon. It's October, it's my favorite month, it's my birthday month, and since it's October, it's spooky season. You guys have been begging me to cover the most horrific and terrifying true crime cases I know, and all I gotta say is, be careful what you ask for. No, seriously, this one is awful. The Brooks family lived in Bel Air, Ohio, a little small town where everyone knows everyone and everyone knows your business. From the outside, the Brooks family appeared to be your average, happy, normal Catholic family. You have mom, dad, and 3 sons, but behind closed doors, reality may have been a lot darker than anyone knew. There were rumors in town that the father of the household, Terry Brooks, was an abusive, angry alcoholic who primarily took out his violence and anger on his wife and his middle child, Nathan Brooks. Before experiencing vicious abuse at the hands of his own father, Nathan was described as being sweet, happy, and gentle, but as he got older, he became more withdrawn and just sad. As a young boy, Nathan was a devout member of his Catholic church. He was an altar boy. He was also very close with his priest and also wanted to be a priest himself when he grew up. But pretty much everything that described Nathan Brooks did a full 180 in his teen years. Don't know an exact age when these disturbing behaviors started, but what I do know is by the time that Nathan was 17 years old, and it was the summer before his senior year started, Nathan became fascinated in the occult and also Satanism and became obsessed with serial killers. He started experimenting with mind-altering substances, hallucinogenics, and also dabbling in his own satanic rituals. Nathan was confronted by his older brother who found him hiding animal bones in his bedroom, including the skull of a baby lamb. His older brother also accused Nathan of tormenting and torturing neighborhood cats. It was also this summer that Nathan got a part-time job at a nursing home, which seems nice, but while at the nursing home, he became obsessed with patients that were close to death so that he could study and watch them slowly die. It was also around this time that Nathan himself realized that he was not the same as other people, like it wasn't already completely obvious to everyone else. But Nathan says that he realized this after 2 of his very close friends passed away in the same year, and at their funerals he would watch all these other people grieve, but he did not feel any strong emotions himself and only found himself wondering what was going to happen to their bodies after they died, like how they were going to, decompose. And he also began to question if he was evil. When senior year started in the fall, teachers and students alike both realized that this Nathan Brooks that came back for senior year was not the same Nathan that had left for summer break. This Nathan was very odd. He was drawing satanic symbols in his notebooks as well as other really, really odd things like God is dead and Satan is good and Satan is my BFF. Nathan was also signing all of his school assignments under the name Nathan Brooks, Master of Death. And for all of these odd behaviors, Nathan was sent to talk to the school counselor, and the school counselor thought that Nathan was very nice until Nathan told her that he was going to cut off her head and leave her body on the side of the road. Big, big yikes. The school counselor called Nathan's mom and told her what Nathan said to her, and Nathan's mom told the school counselor that Nathan was just going through a phase. So what exactly has happened to Nathan? What caused this teenage boy to drastically change everything about himself and his behavior in what seems one summer? And as the first month of Nathan's senior year came to a close at the end of September 1995, Nathan's behavior only got worse. And then 1 month before Halloween on September 30th, 1995, while both of his parents slept, 17-year-old Nathan shot his father, 53-year-old Terry Brooks, in the head 3 times. He then used a hatchet to kill his mother, 51-year-old Marilyn Brooks. He then used a sharp weapon on her 10 times and then attempted to crucify his mother onto the wall. Nathan then used a hacksaw to remove his father's head, then said that he performed a ritual on it, and he said that he felt Satan's love while he was doing this, and then Nathan put his father's head in a punch bowl in the living room. Nathan's younger brother, 16-year-old Ryan, was not home that night, but he was supposed to be. He was over at a friend's house playing video games, but time kind of escaped them. They didn't realize how late it had gotten, and around 1 a.m. Ryan called his house to, tell his parents where he was and tell them, I'm probably just going to stay the night over at my friend's house. But his parents did not answer the phone. His brother Nathan did, after just killing both of their parents. And Nathan told Ryan that, Mom and Dad actually want you to come home, so come home right now. By the time that Ryan got home, his brother had already left. He found it odd that all the lights were on because at this point it was around 3 a.m. and his father has to get up for work early in the morning. At only 16 years old, Ryan was the one to find this gruesome scene. Blood everywhere and his father's head laying in a punch bowl. Nathan was found shortly later just walking around. He was arrested and he made a full and detailed confession and also confessed that he planned to kill his younger brother Ryan and then go on a killing spree. Multiple hit lists were actually found in Nathan's room and also at his locker at school, but the first 3 names were always his brother, his mother, and his father. Several names also had what Nathan planned to do to them, like how he planned to kill them, written next to the names, like Skin and SA. Some of the other names on Nathan's list were Ashley, Mike, Jill, Corey, Dave, Ryan, Jason, and Justin. And when the media in this really, really small town heard about this horrific case that happened in their small town, they ran with it. And there was mass panic throughout the entire community that there was a satanic cult in their town. And I cannot believe that they were even able to do this, but the media even published Nathan's hit list in the newspaper, which caused even more terror because Nathan's hit list did not include last names. So if you are someone named Ashley, Mike, Jill, Corey, Justin, or Jason, and you think there's a satanic cult now in your town because that's what the media is putting out there, you now think that you're going to be next. And after this horrific crime and all of the panic in the community, there were some teens that tried to pull some pranks that the media completely blew out of proportion as proof of these cults in the area. Reportedly, children became afraid of their own friends and their own family members and did not trust anyone. People in the town also believed that Nathan was possessed by a demon at the time of the crimes because of his drastic change in behavior, and also apparently in the weeks before the murders, Nathan would often complain about smelling rotten meat, which apparently, I guess, is a sign of someone being possessed by a demon. The more you know, right? And then on October 12th, less than 2 weeks after the murders, the mayor actually canceled Halloween for that year, which made people even feel more frightened because now if the mayor feels unsafe, then we must be unsafe. Nathan, at only 17 years old, was being tried as an adult on 2 counts of murder, which he pled not guilty for by reason of insanity. During his trial, they actually played his confession tapes for the jury, where you could hear Nathan laughing hysterically as he detailed in gruesome, terrifying detail how he killed his parents. You could also hear Nathan on this confession tape saying that he planned this huge murder spree where he planned to kill everyone that trusted him. And reportedly, Nathan actually cried while this tape was being played in his trial. From everything I've read, it appears that Nathan's surviving family stuck by him through his trial and still continue to stick by him, but I don't know how accurate that information is. And I did find one nice detail I can report to you guys in this whole terrifying true crime case. So you remember the youngest Brooks brother, Ryan Brooks? He was only 16 years old when this entire thing happened. Well, the community actually all came together and raised money to pay for his college, which I thought was nice, and I did want to share that with you guys. And Nathan Brooks was found guilty on all charges, and apparently he showed no emotion while that was read out. He was sentenced to 40 years to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. And from what I've read, apparently he's eligible for parole on September 18th, 2025. So less than 1 year away. If you watched the end of this video, thank you so much. Please leave me all your thoughts in the comments, what case you want to see me cover next. But until then, I love you guys so much, and I will see you guys tomorrow with another case.
She was left to die all alone in her bedroom by the person that was supposed to love and protect her. As the mother to a child with additional needs, this case absolutely breaks me heart. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the case of Debbie Leach. On the 29th of August 2019, emergency services in Blackpool received a phone call from 49-year-old Elaine Clark. Elaine was calling to report that her 24-year-old daughter Debbie had been unwell the past couple of days. She hadn't really been eating or drinking, and she was telling the operator that her daughter Debbie had actually passed away. When the operator was telling Elaine to go to Debbie to try some life-saving measures, Elaine completely refused. Paramedics raced to the house on Garden Terrace, South Shore, where they would walk into the scene describing it as, quote, resembling a horror movie. There, in an upstairs bedroom, lay in an unnatural position on the filthy bedroom floor, they would discover the body of Debbie Leach. Debbie was a vulnerable young woman. Alongside having Down syndrome, she also had many other health-related issues, which meant that she was completely dependent on her mother Elaine to look after her. Because of Debbie's additional needs, Elaine would be classed as her full-time carer as well as being her parent. Because of this, she would receive enhanced benefit money along with over £200 a week to care for Debbie. But doing that was the last thing on her mind. Other members of the family would describe Elaine as a selfish, lazy mother who would rather spend her time going out buying handbags and lazing about in bed than actually caring for her children. In April 2018, Elaine would take Debbie to a checkup appointment at the GP, where the doctor would notice that Debbie had Norwegian scabies all over her skin, something that is brought on by severe neglect. She was given a treatment plan and then discharged with a follow-up appointment booked. However, Debbie would never show up at the appointment because Elaine didn't take her. After this missed appointment, the GPs would make a referral to Adult Social Services, and this would be one of many referrals that never resulted in anything. In late 2018, Elaine was once again being looked into by social services regarding the care of her other children. Aside from Debbie, she had 3 other children, all of whom either suffered with learning or physical difficulties. These social workers would describe Debbie's home as being inadequate to live in. It was absolutely minging, to call a spade a spade. After this referral, they also focused back on Debbie again. They were really trying to get her enrolled at a nearby care centre. Getting Debbie into this care centre would be an opportunity for her to mingle, to make some friends, to get out of the house and have some fun, and it would also act as a little bit of respite for Elaine. But Elaine never took her. She never wanted to, because there would be more eyes on Debbie, and concealing the what should have been obvious neglect would have been much more difficult. In 2019, a family member would visit the family home and went upstairs to see Debbie and was absolutely horrified by the conditions that she was living in. The small dark room absolutely hummed. The family member described it as stinking of filth. There were dirty nappies and plates with mouldy food on the floor, and Debbie was sleeping on a dirty mattress. This family member tried coaxing Debbie, telling her to come out of the room and come downstairs, and Debbie did. She got up, but it was clear as day that it was painful for her to walk. She was wearing dirty and soiled pajamas, and it appeared that she had chunks of her hair missing. This family member would describe Debbie as looking half dead. She would go on to make a report about this, and that very evening a doctor would show up at Debbie's home. By the time they arrived, however, Elaine had ample time to conceal what she had done. She put Debbie in the shower, and it was said that she screamed the entire time. Her body was still covered in the scabies, so washing it and scrubbing her would have been incredibly painful. She was dressed in an oversized hoodie and had her hood pulled up and was sat on the couch waiting for the doctor to arrive. This doctor, along with social services who visited over the next couple of weeks, would report nothing of concern. Even though on 2 separate occasions Elaine would not allow the social workers into her home, instead she reassured them that Debbie was fine, managing to talk her way out of everything, being a master manipulator. If just one of those social workers caught eye on Debbie in the weeks before her death, they would have seen that something was terribly wrong. The final attempt that social services made to see Debbie would be on the 1st of August, and once again they reported nothing of concern, yet days later she would be dead. When paramedics discovered Debbie on the 29th of August 2019, she was almost like a skeleton. She had lost so much weight. At the time of her death, at only 24 years old, Debbie weighed 3 stone 10 pounds. Just 3 years prior, she had weighed over 10 stone, proving that she had been starved and was emaciated. Maggots were discovered surrounding her body, and the untreated Norwegian scabies had multiplied all over her skin and caused infection. In fact, poor Debbie was so covered in these scabies that even her face was unrecognisable. Looking at her, you couldn't tell that she was a young woman. Over the course of the last couple of weeks of her life, Debbie had been severely neglected. She was starved and she didn't even have her basic needs met, such as changing her nappy or giving her a wash or even giving her a plate of food to eat. Whenever she cried out for her mother Elaine, a person that she adored and craved attention from, she would be completely ignored. And so she died alone in her dirty, dark bedroom. At Preston Crown Court in 2022, Elaine Clark would plead guilty to gross negligence manslaughter, and for this she was handed a sentence of 9 years and 7 months imprisonment. She must serve 6.5 years before she is eligible for release.
When her family came home that night, the house was empty. There was a bottle of wine on the table, and their mum was gone. She'd been home alone that weekend, or so she'd thought. It was 2004 on the little island of Craig in Alaska. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. And one of the families living there was the Watermans. And they were great people. They were really nice to have around as part of the local community. They were incredibly community-minded. Dad Carl was a real estate agent and Mum Laurie was a teaching assistant, and she was also a Girl Scouts volunteer. Their son Jeffrey was a great student. They didn't see much of him because he was at college over on the mainland. And their 16-year-old daughter Rochelle was the same, to be honest. She was a good student. She regularly played volleyball and sang in the school choir. They were the kind of family that other people envied. They looked picture perfect. But on the 14th of November, it was a Sunday, and Carl and daughter Rochelle had returned home after a weekend away. Now, they hadn't been away together. Carl had been away with work and Rochelle had been at a volleyball tournament. And son Jeffrey, like I said, was away at college. So when these two got home, they expected to greet Laurie with open arms. Except they walked into an empty house. They were calling out like, "Laurie, Mum, where are you?" And just nothing. And then they were like, "Oh, her van's not here. That's weird. Maybe she popped out." Something didn't feel right inside of the home. Laurie, who never drank, had seemingly put a bottle of wine on the table, and it was like part of it was drunk. Had she had some company round? Now, Laurie had been intending on that weekend going to this fancy, like, non-profit meal, like a fancy dinner. And Carl was looking around the house and was like, oh, she must have made it to that dinner because her worn outfit was there, as well as some pictures that she'd taken at the event. But then he looked closer and things got a little bit more disturbing. The tip of a rubber glove and a footprint on the windowsill. It sent chills down his spine. Had somebody broken in? Now, when police headed over there, they had their eye on Carl. We all know by now they usually look at the romantic partner first, don't they? So they searched his phone, his bank records, maybe something on there could give them a clue. There were rumours that he'd had an affair. It was quite well known, and maybe this could have been a motive. They were convinced if we look at the phone, we'll find something if he's got somebody to come and do the dirty work for him. But actually, no, the phone showed no clues at all. There wasn't actually anything on the phone. It was squeaky clean. Meanwhile, a shocking discovery was made. The very same day that Laurie was reported missing, a burned out vehicle had been found. The car was still smouldering, and inside was a body. But this wasn't like a crash and a car burning because of the crash, because the body was in the back of the car and there was no sign of a driver. This was murder, and the body was Laurie. So police were like, we need to kind of go back to the drawing board. Who else is connected to this family? And they started looking at the 16-year-old daughter. She'd honestly started acting very, very strangely, being very angry, very resentful, kind of dressing a bit differently. Her whole attitude had changed. And she'd been writing a really angry blog about her life and how Alaska was hell. I mean, I've never been, but it looks absolutely gorgeous on Google. She'd also started hanging around with these guys who were a lot older than her and seemed to be bad news. These were Jason Arendt and Brian Riddell. Now, Jason was 25 and him and Rochelle were apparently together like a couple. She was 16. And then police found something very interesting at the home. It was a letter from mum Laurie to daughter Rochelle, talking about how she was sorry that their relationship had become strained. So all three of these people were brought in for questioning, and the guys' stories weirdly didn't match. Somebody was lying, and Jason then claimed he'd been attacked by a man in a car park wearing a dark hood. And when police were like, oh, okay, can you show us your wounds? He pulled away at his neck and showed this tiny little scratch that honestly looked like he could have just done it to himself. So police started questioning this, and it was just obvious they didn't believe Jason. And finally he cracked. He admitted it. He said him and his friend Brian had been told by Rochelle that her mum was abusing her. He said, she told us to kill her. Police convinced him to wear a wire so that they could get some more evidence. They could get potentially a confession. So sure enough, he wore the wire, chatted to Brian, and basically the whole truth came out. Brian ended up being backed into a corner and said, yeah, that is the truth. She did ask us to kill the mum. They'd broken in, tied her up, forced her to drink the wine, bundled her into the car, and then strangled her. Rochelle ended up admitting that she made up the whole abuse story. I don't honestly know why, but it didn't happen, and they'd plotted to kill her. Brian pleaded guilty and got 99 years. Jason only got 50 because it was agreed that he hadn't physically done the murder. And prepare for your blood to boil here, because Rochelle got a measly 3 years behind bars because she was only convicted of criminally negligent homicide.
This 2-year-old girl was locked inside of a room with a dog that had harmed her before. 2-year-old Lachlan Rose McGuire lived in Oklahoma with her parents Darcy and Jordan. At that age, Lachlan depended on the adults in her life to give her safety, supervision, and protection, but unfortunately, she was never given any of those. Oftentimes, Lachlan would be confined inside of a bedroom as a form of containment. The door to the bedroom had a double-sided child lock, meaning she couldn't get out on her own. And sometimes she would be locked inside of that room with the family's pit bull who had already shown violent behavior towards her. On November 6 of 2025, Lachlan was attacked by the family dog, and it was so severe that she needed to get plastic surgery done. Despite the severity of what happened to Lachlan, the family dog was not removed from the home and authorities were not notified. Lachlan continued to live in the same environment with the same adults in the same known danger. Over the next several days, the pattern continued. Lachlan remained in the home, and locking her inside of the bedroom continued. Her parents were fully aware of the dog's aggression and the previous attack, but they continued to leave her alone with the dog. On November 18th, Lachlan was once again confined inside of the bedroom with the dog. At some point, the dog attacked her again, but this time the injuries were deadly. A welfare check was eventually called, and once police arrived to the home, they found Lachlan unresponsive. She was pronounced dead at the scene, and it was confirmed that she died from severe dog mauling injuries. Doctors stated that her death was completely preventable and not the result of a sudden or unavoidable accident. During the investigation, police discovered that Lachlan's parents knew that the dog was dangerous and had attacked her before. They knew the risks, and yet they still continued to lock their 2-year-old daughter inside of a room with it. On November 21st, both parents were arrested and initially charged with second-degree murder. Just weeks later, on December 8th, those charges were upgraded to first-degree murder along with 2 charges of animal cruelty. Each parent is being held on a $1 million bond and could be facing life in prison if they are convicted.
This is the story of Marissa Teetsort. 28-year-old Marissa Teetsort is a Wausau, Wisconsin native. She grew up in a very dysfunctional home. Her parents were abusive and neglectful. She endured physical trauma, which caused child welfare to intervene. This resulted in Marissa being removed from her parents' custody and placed in the system. She ultimately repeated the exact same abuse she endured. Marissa had documented history of severe child abuse allegations against her own biological children. Social services had to repeatedly intervene in her household due to safety concerns. In June of 2017, the father of 2 of her children filed a restraining order and a child abuse injunction against her. She had left their 1-year-old in a hot car and later abandoned the child during a rainstorm to attend a party. He had provided evidence that Marissa was physically abusing the boys and that she had a pill addiction. With the ongoing allegations and the unsafe living conditions, Marissa got all 4 of her children taken away. She had 5. But that did not stop nor faze her. She went on to become a babysitter, and she kept her legal troubles a secret. He built a solid clientele. Word of mouth made her even bigger. All the moms wanted Marissa to watch their children. But what they didn't know, outside of her legal troubles with her own children, in June of 2017, a 3-month-old infant that was in the care of Marissa had to be admitted to the hospital for bruises and a fractured skull. When the police questioned her about this incident, she said the baby's sister threw a bottle at his head, but the doctors said that does not align with this baby's bruises. But the investigators couldn't actually prove what caused the fracture, so no charges were filed against her, but the case was documented in the child welfare system. In August of 2018, Marissa was hired to babysit an 11-month-old girl. When the girl's mother came to pick her up, she noticed that her baby had abrasions, raw open wounds on both sides of her nose. The 11-month-old was visibly shaken and wouldn't even let her mother touch her face. Marissa texted the mother saying that her baby had fell off the couch and got rug burn. When the mother took the child to the hospital, the doctor said, "That's inconsistent." And he also said that these marks were intentional. On October 11th, 2018, felony child abuse charges were finally filed against Marissa, but she still was not taken into custody, which probably would have saved this next child's life if they would have just locked her ass up, because just 7 days later, on October 18th, Lauren went to pick up her 2-month-old baby boy, whose name was Benson, from Marissa's house. Marissa had babysat Benson that day while Lauren was at work. After the small talk, Lauren, Benson, and Lauren's sister went to the laundromat. Once they were at the laundromat, Lauren looked at her baby thinking he's not looking quite like himself. She even asked her sister what she thought, and the two looked at the baby and seen that his skin was like a grayish color. She unbuckled Benson from his car seat and his body was cold to the touch. His limbs were stiff. She immediately started to panic and perform CPR while her sister dialed 911. Now, when the medics got there, they immediately noticed that this child has been deceased for literally hours. Lauren immediately started texting and calling Marissa, but she's not getting any answer. The police went to Marissa's house, banged on the door. They didn't get an answer. They even kicked her door in to search the house, but Marissa was nowhere to be found. They then looked up her phone provider and pinged her location. She was at a hotel 40 miles away. It is 4 a.m. at this point. The police pulled up to that hotel and banged on that door, and her boyfriend answered with an attitude, I might add, because he thinks that they're there for the case that she caught the week prior. He even told the police that they need to leave. Boy, move. Marissa was sound asleep in the bed when the police came, and they woke her ass up and said, come on out in the hallway. We need to talk. When they told her the baby was dead, she tried her best to fake cry. They asked her what happened, and she continuously said that she didn't know. They then asked her why wasn't she answering none of Lauren's calls. She said her phone was off, but we know that that's a lie because they got her location from her phone. Marissa said that she was just at the hotel using their swimming pool, and at this point, the police are frustrated. One of the officers that was at the hotel literally just seen her a week prior from her other child abuse case. And mind you, this was her face at some parts of that interview at the hotel. This laughing. She was taken down to the police station for further questioning, and it was there where the police told her Benson's cause of death. It was blunt force trauma and broken tailbone. That's when Marissa started to tell the truth about what happened. She had grew frustrated with the child. She also was watching other children that day as well. As her frustration grew with all that was going on with the children, she threw Benson in the playpen. She had threw him so hard that it caused 3 severe head injuries and broke his tailbone. And she knew she had threw him in that playpen hard because he quickly fell silent. And she stood there for a minute and walked away. She went to tend to the other children. She didn't check his pulse. She didn't call for help. She didn't do nothing. And when her boyfriend got home, she dressed this deceased baby up in his snowsuit, put him in a car seat, and they all went to McDonald's. This is them at McDonald's right here. And she knew that this baby was dead. Lauren called shortly after saying that she was coming to pick up her son. And she put Benson's hat down low so Lauren couldn't tell that he was deceased. Marissa was charged with first-degree intentional murder, and she initially pled not guilty. Her bond was set for $500K, and she wrote the courts several times asking for her bond to be reduced because she didn't have no family. Girl, fuck you. In September of 2021, after being deemed competent to stand trial, Marissa changed her plea to not guilty by reason of insanity. She withdrew that about a month later, accepting a plea of no contest. This dropped her charges to first-degree reckless homicide and a separate child abuse charge. This caused her to skip a trial. She was sentenced to 43 years. 37 of those years are for Benson's death. And oh, look. This whole time she was pregnant with her sixth child. Marissa is in jail being the biggest manipulator you will ever know. She is begging any and everybody to put money, keep money on her books. She is on some site swindling and scamming men to put money on her books. She even told one of the men that she has the best cat. My heart goes out to all of the children that this psychopath have harmed. And why don't they just let people just continuously change their plea? Pick one and stick with it. She said not guilty. All right, take that shit to trial then. And now y'all done got all the way down to no contest. What the? Let's talk about it, Yellow Tape.